A couple of weeks ago, I gave you guys the single best tip to play every single one of the 51 brawlers in the game. I know this says 50, but I put a bonus tip in there for Meg, so it counts. In today's video, I'm going to give you the single best tip to counter all 51 brawlers in the game, starting with the Trophy Road Brawlers. Shelly can charge her super very quickly, and I do not need to tell you how destructive that super is. So you should always play against Shelly as if she has her super charged, even if she doesn't have it charged up at the moment. Not only will this make it obviously harder for her to charge her super, but it'll make it that much more difficult for her to get a sneaky opportunity in there to blast you in the face with her super. Some brawlers can destroy Nita's bear super easily, while other brawlers really struggle against it. Even if the bear is not going after you, always be aware of which teammate the bear is going after, because you might be able to help that brawler a lot, especially if you can deal with the bear easier. Play as a team, win as a team. Colt shoots a lot of projectiles with his main attack, so it can be pretty tough to avoid all of them, but you can significantly decrease how much of those bullets actually hit you and how much damage he does to you by actually strafing a little bit more to the left or right than you usually do. Unless the enemy Colt can tell the future, it's going to be much harder for him to hit all of his shots if you're not traveling in a straight line. Bull doesn't mind receiving a good amount of damage since he's pretty tanky as long as he can find a place to heal. So you should do whatever you can to prevent him from healing. This might mean dealing damage to him, forcing him to shoot and come after you, or whatever it takes. Honestly, this same rule goes for pretty much all tanky brawlers as well, because sometimes tanks just standing where they want to be to prevent you from passing them is all they need to do to be efficient. Up next is Jesse. But first, I wanted to give a huge thank you to Mech Arena for sponsoring this video. Mech Arena is a 5v5 mech shooter game on mobile that you're gonna want to click on the link below to download for free, or just scan that QR code. We've got mechs that you can customize, swap them around with different weapons, and the matches are quick and you immediately jump into high action gameplay, which is honestly a blast. I personally love the amount of polish on this game. It feels very smooth and responsive, and the graphics are so good. There's a lot of strategic depth to this game, and I love how the maps actually change how you want to play. My favorite map is the Mesa Verde Annex, and it's not just because it looks like a paradise, but because it has highs and lows, which actually allows for a lot of strategic gameplay. Another great map is Colonnade. It has lots of walls and obstacles that you can take cover behind, which completely changes the strategies you'll want to make. But probably the coolest part of the game is how you can customize your mech so that it fits your playstyle. Not only are there tons of different mechs that all have their own special abilities, you can equip each one with one or two different weapons that each have their different pros and cons. And there are actually a lot of special events going on right now, including daily welcome rewards that you do not want to miss, since it's going to help you unlock lots of cool stuff for your mechs. There's even some special Halloween events coming on with apparently some spooky skins, which is going to be really awesome, plus a new weapon called the Disc Launcher. If you use the link below or scan the QR code on the screen, you'll download the game and get a special digital desert skin, 200 A coins, and 10,000 credits. I've also made some space in my friends list, and if you download it quick enough and send me a friend request, I just might be able to add you. Once again, a big thank you to Mech Arena for sponsoring this video, and thank you for supporting my channel by watching. What you don't want to do when facing Jessie is ignore her turret. When Jessie throws her Scrappy down, you should destroy it as fast as possible. You may be tempted to continue trying to win your lane or defeat Jessie herself, but getting rid of her turret will make it much easier for you to defeat brawlers and will make it much easier for your team as well. I often see people pick brawlers that are good on maps with lots of walls, like Rico or a thrower, even when the enemy is playing a Brock in Power League. Since Brock is able to break walls so easily, and he usually does that, it's usually better for you to pick a long-range brawler with the expectation that the walls will be destroyed. If you're not playing in Power League and you just come up against a random enemy Brock though, one tip though is to waste Brock's ammo before pushing him, since he has such a slow reload speed. The further the Dynamite throws his attack, the less time the enemy will have to react before it explodes. This means you should always try to stay close to an enemy Dynamite if it's possible, so long as you don't end up getting 2v1'd, since you'll actually know where the projectiles will be before they explode, making it much easier for you to dodge them. When you're facing an enemy Bo, it is very easy to remember where his super mines are and just avoid them. I'm here to tell you should not ignore them even if you know where they are. You always want to take the time to set them off, because there is a good chance that your teammates won't know where they are because they're facing off against another brawler and they will very likely die to them. This is especially useful if you're a brawler that can easily set them off and get out of their range, like Mortis or Max. Tick's main attack covers such a large area that it's almost impossible for you to move up the map without being hit by one of his bombs. This is actually why you shouldn't be afraid to move through a bomb or two in order to push Tick back and get good positioning on the map. Similar to Dynamite, Tick's attacks are easier to avoid if you get closer to him. Sacrificing a little HP to get closer to an enemy to Tick is usually a good idea. 8-Bit Super strengthens himself and his whole team and can even boost his stats even more if he has his star power equipped. So like Jesse's turret, do whatever you can to destroy the booster as quickly as possible. This will either keep 8-Bit slow slow or decrease his damage, and will take away the buffs from his teammates. Ems has the only attack in the game that will deal more damage to you as you follow it. If you accidentally step into Ems's range, fight your natural reaction to run away and instead go toward her. This will minimize the damage you will receive and will likely force her to use a gadget if she has it. Stu's super is not only useful for dodging attacks, but it's also useful for him to hit his next attack and recharge his super. This is why you want to make his first super as hard to charge as you can, and if he happens to charge it anyway, try to make him use it to dash to a spot where he can't hit you. This will make even Stu's super a little harder to charge and ultimately slow him down over the entire match. Up next are the rare brawlers. Unlike some close range brawlers, El Primo's attacks are a series of projectiles that are fired one after the other. You can actually avoid a lot of them if you are right on top of El Primo and move in random directions as he's trying to punch you. You probably won't dodge all of his attacks, but you will decrease the amount of damage that you take significantly if you dodge from the right spots. Barley does well on maps with lots of walls and choke points since he's all about area control. This is why you should try to make it a priority to break the walls that the Barley seems to be hiding behind and open up the map a little bit more. This will widen up the area and give Barley less of control because there will be fewer choke points and less walls for him to use to protect himself from you. Poco is certainly not the best brawler in 1v1 situations and will almost definitely lose every single time without his super. This is why you always want to keep an eye on where Poco is on the map so he doesn't have opportunities to hit multiple targets. You may think that there is strength in numbers, but that is not usually the case against Poco unless you're spread out. Rosa's super gives her a shield that prevents 70% damage dealt to her, which basically makes her indestructible while active. What you do not want to do is waste your ammo while she has that super up. Instead, you should conserve her ammo and wait until her shield is down before unloading your ammo on her. Up next are the super rare brawlers. It's pretty obvious that you want to stay away from tight spaces while facing Rico, since he doesn't really have to aim to hit all of his shots. But you may not have a choice sometimes, so you should probably look in between the angle where Rico's shots travel. Obviously, they're not going to be as predictable as I'm making it in this gameplay right here, but sometimes if you're paying attention, you can avoid almost all of his bullets and get past those tight spaces, which is going to get you close to Rico and take away his advantage. Daryl's super is most effective if he can bump the enemy right at the end of his super, so they're in the air while he can shoot them before they can recover from the knockback. If you can't avoid his super, it's actually a good idea to be closer to where he started his super than further away, so he'll actually roll past you and you'll land before he finishes his roll, which will give you time to unload your shots on him. Penny's main attack can deal more damage with its splash damage after hitting someone than with its first hit. So if it wasn't obvious enough, do not move behind any targets that stand between you and Penny. I know this is a super obvious tip, but I see people bunching up when facing enemy Pennies all the time. Carl's main attack can be fired and reloaded significantly faster if he bounces it off a nearby wall. This is why you should avoid moving in between Carl and walls that are close by. This will also make Carl have to wait for his main attack to travel its full range before he can hit you with it again, which just gives you plenty of time for you to defeat him and avoid the attack. Since Jackie can hit targets behind walls, most people know to stay away from Jackie even if she's on the other side of a wall. But something you may not think about as much is placing your turrets, cannons, totems, and anything else away from walls, since it will make it easier for Jackie to destroy them. Up next are the epic brawlers. Piper has a pretty slow reload speed, but her shots can deal a ton of damage at max range. If you're struggling to dodge her shots, sometimes it's worth it to use a gadget or like a super to place an object in front of you to tank a shot or two. You might buy enough time to heal a little, and she'll have to waste an extra shot or two, so you'll be able to get close enough to her to make her shots become a bit weaker. Obviously, this tip doesn't work for every brawler, so otherwise, just try and make her waste her shots because her reload speed's so slow. Pam's attack fires 9 projectiles in total. 5 projectiles to the center, 2 to the left, and 2 to the right. So you actually take significantly less damage by staying to the sides of her attack instead of near the center of her attack. But near max range, you can actually completely avoid all projectiles by positioning yourself like this. This is really tricky to pull off in actual combat, but if you learn to do it, you can avoid massive damage. Frank super stuns enemies for so long, he's usually able to take out most brawlers before they are free from that stun. This is why, unless you know where Frank is on the map, keep your distance from all bushes. Even if there are walls or boxes between you and the grass, it's safer to assume that Frank is hiding with his super until you find him than risk getting close to a bush and getting caught by an unsuspecting super. With BB's charged attack, she can push enemies so far that they're actually out of her range, which is why skilled BBs usually try to knock you back into a wall so that you're still within her range. If you can't avoid being hit by it, try to line yourself up so that you do get knocked back at full distance. You'll be able to stay out of her range and avoid getting hit by her again, and a lot of times you'll actually outrange her. B can deal tons of damage, but only with her supercharged supercharged shot. Playing against B is as simple as playing aggressively while she doesn't have a supercharged shot, and playing passively when she does have it charged up. Tank as many regular shots as you need to close the gap, but always make sure you have something to hide behind or something to place in front of you for when she gets that charged shot up. Nani's super can deal some of the most damage in one hit out of all the attacks in the game, and in fact she can actually one-shot several brawlers. If you're a brawler that can take that kind of hit, try to get hit by her super as soon as you can so it doesn't travel to a brawler that can't take the hit. On the flip side, if you can't take that hit, find a bigger brawler to hide behind if you can't dodge it. Whether it's a wall or a teammate or whatever, you do not want to get one-shotted by Peep anytime soon. Edgar's only effective from a short range, but he can deal some serious damage once he actually gets his super so that he can get close to you. This is why you want to save any kind of dash, knockback, or stun for when Edgar uses his super. This will guarantee a good use out of whatever you're using, and if you do this enough, it'll leave Edgar helpless for the entire match. Now Griff has a very powerful super that travels far and wide and goes through any target that it hits. Since it deals damage on the way out and on the way in, if you get hit by it on the way out, make sure you quickly move out of the pathway so you're not hit a second time. You'll want to pay close to where that enemy Griff is moving so you can do this effectively. Not only will you save yourself a little bit of health, but you'll keep Griff from getting that much closer to recharging his super, which again is very strong. Up next are the Mythic Brawlers. Mortis does extremely well in close range combat, especially if there are multiple targets to hit. If you see a Mortis approaching you or a teammate, you'll want to stay close enough to your teammate that you'll be able to easily hit Mortis and deal damage to him, but not close enough where he will be able to hit both of you within a single dash. Finding that perfect distance away from your teammate will help you maximize damage without letting Mortis chain his super. Terra's main attack can pierce through as many targets as it wants to, and her super pulls all targets that are within its radius. This is why when you're facing an enemy Terra, you absolutely need to stay spread out. If you do end up lining yourself up with your allies, there's a good chance Terra will easily charge her super and might even be able to completely wipe you out in one go. Now, even though Jean's main attack from max range deals very little damage, it does charge his super with every single hit, and his super, as we know, can be game-changing. So it's not only important to avoid his attacks before it spreads out, but it's also important to avoid his attack no matter what. The less super Jean gets in a match, the better your match will likely be. Once Max activates her super, she and her teammates can be really hard to hit while their speed is increased. You may not want to save all of your ammo until they slow down, but it's definitely a good idea for you to save ammo until the effects of her super wear off. Just because they're running around you super close to you doesn't mean you should just unload all of your ammo. Some brawlers like Jean and Piper can't handle Mr. P's porters at all. Other brawlers like Amber and Nita do very well with them. So it's important to recognize which brawlers on your team are best for fighting through the porters and then actually switch places with your teammates accordingly. Mr. P becomes very strong when he can hide behind his porters, so if you can pierce through them, it's a good idea for you to focus on facing Mr. P, even if that means you have to move across the map. Now, Sprout's main attack is actually pretty easy to avoid in open areas, and so even though it's actually a thrower, you'll want to play against it like you would against Rico. Break whatever walls you need to, avoid tight spaces, and get as close as you can to it. This will make it much harder for Sprout to hit you, plus Sprout will have a harder time boxing you into small spaces with its super. Now when you're facing some brawlers, it's a good idea for you to kind of chip away at their health over time until you can take them out. But when they're getting healed by Byron, it is almost impossible for you to do this, which is why you should save your ammo, super, or whatever you've got so you can unload it as quickly as possible, whether that's on Byron or whichever brawler he's trying to support. If you're fast enough, Byron's healing effect won't have enough time to make much of a difference. He obviously can't heal a brawler that's defeated. If Squeak sticks a Blom on you, you are going to take damage. But that doesn't mean that you don't have to pay attention to where you are when it explodes. It is important to not move a Blom on you over to where it's going to deal damage to your teammates or other targets, especially if Squeak has his first star power equipped. The damage is pretty much unavoidable at that point, so it's better for you to take your damage and you away from your ally or their turret. Up next are the legendary brawlers. Spike has great range, great control, and his main attack has the potential to deal massive damage if he can hit you with it before it explodes, so it's actually really hard to counter a skilled Spike. That being said, you should pay close attention to how many shots Spike has used before approaching him. If you attempt to go after him while he has all of his shots loaded, you're probably not going to get very close, and you'll let him easily charge his super off of you. Instead, wait till he quickly fires some shots so that he can't reload by the time you're within his range. Now when you're poisoned from Crow, all healing effects dealt to you are decreased. Whether you're using a gadget to heal yourself or a super to heal a teammate, try to wait until the target is not poisoned anymore, so that the full healing effect is received. Since Crow does very little damage over time, healing can actually be very useful against him, but if you're not paying attention to who is poisoned by Crow, there's a good chance you and your team are going to struggle to heal. Leon's super can get him almost to any point on the map without being seen. This is exactly why, unless you know exactly where Leon is, you should pretty much assume that he's either invisible and he's coming for you, or he's hiding in a bush that you wouldn't normally suspect him to be in. Even if you're not sure if he's actually invisible, it's a good idea to play it safe until you are absolutely positive where that Leon is. So go find your teammate, get a gadget ready, or just retreat to a safer spot. Sandy's super covers a very large area, but the super itself isn't exactly what will get you hurt. It's the enemy brawlers inside of it. So make sure not only to stay clear of Sandy's super, but to stay very far away from it so that the brawlers that in it won't be able to surprise you by popping out and hitting you. Not only will this make it harder for the enemy team to capitalize on his super, but it will also make it much more difficult for Sandy to recharge his super, which normally can actually take him a long time to do. Strafing against Amber is pretty much useless since she just has to auto fire in order to hit you, and depending on how far away you are, sometimes you just can't avoid it. Your best bet is to either use walls to hide behind until you can get closer to her, or swap sides with a teammate that can actually outrange Amber. Her flames pierce through anything they touch and will follow you wherever they go, but if they can't reach you, none of that actually matters. Now I have two quick tips for Meg. First, she's completely vulnerable while equipping the mecha, so you can usually be aggressive when she's charging her super up in hopes of killing her, or possibly even just charging her super while she's vulnerable. And second, she currently doesn't have any ammo when her mecha is destroyed, making that another very vulnerable time for you to focus on killing her. And finally, we have the chromatic brawlers. Now Gale's super will actually push you all the way outside of his attack range. You can kind of think of his super like BB's knockback, where you do not want to get knocked back into a wall, because then he'll be able to follow up with attacks. Instead, you want to try and stay outside of his attack range or even his super range, or position yourself so that when you do get blown away, you won't hit a wall, which will give you an opportunity to escape. Now Surge has a lot of potential to do some serious work, but also a lot of potential to hardly do anything the whole match. This is why you need to stay out of his range or use your gadgets or super as many times as you can to prevent him from charging his super up. If he does get his super throughout the game, you need to make it a priority to defeat Surge, even if that means your whole team trying to take him out. Any Surge at level 3 or 4 needs to be defeated at almost any cost. Now Colette deals damage based off of the enemy health instead of dealing the same amount of damage to each shot, so she's really not afraid of big brawlers. If you're unfortunate to face Colette with a bulky brawler, you honestly want to just avoid her like the plague. With how fast she can charge her super and how much damage she deals with it, it's best to have her fighting against smaller brawlers with less HP, so don't be afraid to switch with your teammates to make sure that you have a more favorable matchup. Sometimes you can't avoid Lou's super since he can throw it right on top of you. If this happens, you need to choose the direction you want to be moving before the ice puddle lands on you, since changing directions inside of the ice puddle takes way too much time. This will be the fastest way to get out of a super and give you the best shot at living through it. Bonus tip, pay attention to where the walls are, because walls are their worst enemy when you're stuck inside Lou's super. Each time a brawler receives damage boosts from Colonel Russ's super, the team gets scarier and scarier. Think of Colonel Russ's super as a 7-star bounty. Whoever has it needs to be taken out as soon as possible. As long as you can keep Colonel Russ's whole team from receiving a damage boost, you'll have a pretty good chance at overpowering his team in the long run, because Colonel Ruffs without his boost is actually pretty weak. Now this tip might be a little too obvious for Belle, but it still happens so often that I feel like I have to say it. If anything is hit by Belle's main attack, run away from that thing. On the other hand, if you are hit by Belle's main attack, do not run toward your friendly targets. This is all to avoid bounce shots from Belle's attack. And if you can avoid those bounce shots, Belle won't be able to charge her super as quickly, and you'll also be able to start healing way faster. Honestly, it just comes down to paying attention and acting accordingly. If Buzz stuns more than one brawler with his super, he will recharge his super so fast that you won't be free from his first stun before he's actually stunning you again. Do whatever you can to stay away from your teammates while Buzz has his super. You can stay close enough to offer some help in case your teammate does get stunned, and in fact I would encourage you to do that, but you don't want to pile on top of each other. Ash becomes very strong by taking a lot of damage, but then healing up since his rage bar doesn't deplete as fast as he can heal. So try to defeat Ash with powerful shots as quickly as you can, instead of trying to wear him down little by little. The goal is to either defeat him or keep him walking around with minimal rage. And there you have it, 51 tips to counter all 51 brawlers in Brawl Stars. Now's where I would ask you to actually put your own tips for countering various brawlers. In other words, please just vent your frustrations when playing with randoms. And hopefully this will help everybody read in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you subscribe for more, and there are other videos that you can watch right here, right now. Don't forget to use code Kairos in the Brawl Stars shop to support the creation of these videos on my channel and also support my family as well. And for now, this is KairosTime ticking by. We will see you in Brawl Stars.